guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorian's Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
We're back with your main stories here on Media Monitor. The SACP's 14th National Elective Congress held in Boksburg drew to a close yesterday. The conference wrapped up with the party reaffirming a 2007 Congress decision to contest for state power, with its 1,819 delegates successfully pushing for that move. Now, the Congress was packed with vigorous discussions that were centered around state capture, whether or not to break away from the tripartite alliance and contest with the ANC at the 2019 polls and elections within the party. Newly re-elected SACP General Secretary Blaine Nzimande called for government to stop doing business with the politically connected Gupta family, which is accused of having undue influence on the president and his cabinet. Meanwhile, former Second Deputy General Secretary Solima Paila replaced former First Deputy General Secretary Mr. Jeremy Cronin, who this past Monday announced that he was vacating his seat that he had occupied for the past 23 years. Let's find out more in this clip.
Loosely translated, have you heard the good news? The SACP is contesting the elections. This decision by the SACP to contest the elections on its own will have major implications for the 27-year-old alliance as we know it. It's led by an ailing ANC, which now could face an ally on the ballot paper.
Formations contesting elections independently does not necessarily make an opposition. That's not where we are at this point in time.
The SACP maintains it has confidence in the alliance. However, it says it's uncertain whether or not the ANC can continue to be the unifier of the alliance.
In particular, there is a deep threat of wanton parasitic looting of public resources associated with state capture.
The SACP says this resolution is no threat to the ANC, which heads to its elective conference in December.
We are not waiting for the December conference. But what happens in the December conference will have implications for all of us. So that is why we are saying that we have to be alert.
It remains unclear what impact the winning faction would have on the SACP's resolution on state power. The modality of how the party would go about contesting the elections will be ratified at a special congress next year. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Boksburg.
Gentlemen, what do you make of the stance by the SACP, that decision to break away from, of course, the Tripartite Alliance?
I think it's a good move for the SACP. Probably they should have done it earlier, maybe after the 2 terms of democracy. Because when you look at it now, you'll find that the ANC has a situation of a brand that has plummeted deeply, and of which, moving forward, if the SACP is going in the same basket with the ANC, you will know what will be the outcome be when ANC probably doesn't get maybe like 50% or 51% in the next elections. So it's a lot of issues of which they are very emotional in the country. So SACP has to do public relations and ensure that they position themselves earlier to be a contesting political party. But when you look on the other side with the ANC or the Tripartite Alliance as a whole, you will then realize that communication is the issue. I mean, when you look at the Bible, the first statement that was a directive, it was communication. Yeah. You will expect a 100-year organization struggling to be better in communication and in governance. I think that is one of the unfortunate areas for the past 10 years that we start to see the coordination from Parliament, the coordination for the Tripartite Alliance, and the coordination of the ANC and the general public. I think it went so poor. They are trying so much to brand the organization these 10 years, but each and every second day they continue to make mistakes, of which it cancels the good work that has been done.
I mean, Shani, isn't there some sort of dialogue that can take place for the Tripartite Alliance to resolve these issues? Because what I got from what the SACP was saying was that they feel sidelined by the ruling party, and that they feel that the ANC is no longer the unifier within the Tripartite Alliance.
Indeed, and this has been a long time coming, because in the past, not just heading towards the 2019 elections, in the past, both COSATU and SACP actually have always complained that, you know what, before elections, we have these agreements, we talk about things, and then we think, you know, we're a unified force, we're still part of the democratic revolution, and then we put a new leader in place, and then he goes on and does his own thing. So I think the timing for the SACP is certainly quite great, in that this is the time when the ANC seems to be falling apart. So why don't we go out there and pick up the pieces, and maybe we might become, you know, a bigger, a strong force to reckon with. But also, even if we remain as part of this alliance, at least if we're coming with our own basket of votes, we'll be taken more seriously, because we have a force to demonstrate that actually we do have supporters on the ground, and we do carry a real mandate. Yeah,
let's find out from Professor Maluleke. Prof, do you think this is the right move at the right time for this pronouncement by the SACP?
Well, it's difficult to tell whether it's right or wrong, but it certainly is a momentous decision by the SACP. It is the most momentous of the decisions they have made in a long time. I don't think it means they are getting out of the alliance immediately, but I think they are sending a very, very strong signal to their alliance partners that they are not happy, and they are willing to go it alone because of that. Of course, the SACP still has to address a number of issues, including the question of whether they can put feet on the ground, whether they have the infrastructure necessary across the land to be able to compete meaningfully, and whether they have a brand that is able to stand on its own, having depended on the ANC brand for so long. So this decision, momentous as it is actually implies a lot of homework, a lot of work for the SACP, and one hopes that they will be able to do that work.
Absolutely. I mean, even Jeremy Cronin there was echoing those very same sentiments, that the SACP needs to carefully think about this decision before contesting for state power on its own. But let's talk about your thoughts on the SACP's stance on state capture, Milan.
I think what they have to do is to just conduct the market analysis and check with the public if the brand has that value. I mean, when you look on the growth of a Democratic Alliance, it shows a very big threat to the current situation when it comes to the ANC, and then you will see DA and EFF growing, of which the ANC has went down so much in this term. So you have seen already the ANC starting to lose wealthy municipalities like your Joburg, Tshwane, and Nelson Mandela Bay. So when you attend to that, it really shows you a signal from the population or from the citizens that they are no longer willing to align themselves much with the brand, of which we don't know whether when the leadership changes, things will change, or the SACP will have probably to proceed by themselves. But I have a feeling that this is the good position that they have taken. If they can try it now, if they don't get 10% or they don't get 15% in the first move, they can still do the second move. EFF just started, but they have participations in all legislatures, and that is a sign of boldness, and people will follow you from there.
Shani?
For me, on the issue of state capture, clearly that's probably the strongest signal yet that they are probably going to endorse Ramaphosa. They haven't said so, but they seem to be walking the same path on that issue of state capture. They've said unequivocally that, you know what, they're unhappy.
But then how are they endorsing Ramaphosa if they're going to break away from the tripartite alliance? Then it doesn't bode any results for them in the long run. I think, like the professor said, it's just a warning shot. If you continue to walk this path, you know, we will eventually walk away. But, you know, if, because again, they're almost saying, you know what, if you don't elect Ramaphosa, you know, we're going to walk away. But if you elect Ramaphosa, you know what, we might stay in the alliance. Yeah. Because, look, he's the one who was invited to come and speak at their, you know. I want to get a quick word from Professor Maluleke before we go to the ad break. Prof, I mean, it seems that the dispute started right here over the views, the different views when it comes to the issues of state capture. I mean, what do you think this states for the alliance in the near future?
Well, you know, I think it is encouraging to hear people who are inside of cabinet, who are in the NEC, who are in the highest echelons of the alliance, but also of the ANC, speaking out as strongly as we had the SACP and the Deputy President do against state capture. There is a groundswell of opinion that is turning away from covering up the corruption. And I think this is a good stance, and the SACP has really honed in on that. The problem, of course, is the contradictions that the SACP is part of cabinet, has been in there, you know, so what were they doing all this time? The same applies to Deputy President Ramaphosa. But I think South Africans will forgive them if they can prove that they are genuine in having taken this position that they are taking now against state capture and corruption.
All right. That's where we're going to leave it on that discussion. Let's take a quick ad break, and after that, the CRL report on charismatic churches was released this past week, and the commotion, or the communion, is convinced religion is big business and should be treated as such. Well, find out shortly after this break.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Kilimanjaro, majestic and mysterious. 27 climbers. 5,895 meters, 5 days, trekking in honor of Madiba and for underprivileged schoolgirls. In just 5 years, millions of sanitary towels have been distributed countrywide. The target to reach 2 million needy girl children by 2020.
It's time that as men, we must actually pick one sanitary pack.
We can touch one girl through this initiative.
SABC News will again be documenting the arduous expedition. The climbers have one goal in mind. To pledge support for a month's supply of sanitary pads, SMS Gillian or Tabo M to 42513. The South African team hopes to summit Uhuru, Africa's highest peak, on Madiba's birthday, July 18th.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. The Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious as well as Linguistic Communities presented its report on churches and abuse of people's belief systems to Parliament this last week. The report recommends that every religious practitioner must now be registered and fall under recognized umbrella organizations. The Commission undertook the investigation following media reports about instances in places of religious worship which put the lives of congregants in danger by feeding them snakes, grass and even giving them paraffin to drink. Let's find out more in this clip.
Dubious religious practices, self-styled prophets, gullible and vulnerable believers, questionable and risky rituals. It spurred the CRL Rights Commission into action.
What we saw on that day on television.
Countrywide hearings were held.
A person will jump on him today, tomorrow he has a job.
And finally, its recommendations on regulation. All churches to be registered and licensed, stringent vetting for foreign religious leaders, incomes to be declared and taxed.
This commission will not succeed to close down Christianity.
It sparked fury and resistance among some.
Zangomas don't pay tax. They commissioners, they are Zangomas. They are Kobelas. They train people to be Zangomas. They take money. Why don't they set a good example with that? Who is regulating them?
But the Commission remains undeterred.
If everything we are proposing is implemented, Parliament capacitates us to do this through legislation, through financing. We are completely sure it will stop abruptly, and all the bad elements will be removed by their peers from the system.
It's going to take time.
Others support the regularization route.
Most of these people don't belong anywhere. They'll take the finances, put it in a sack, put it in the trunk of the car and go home with it.
But there are still demands.
One separation between church and state. The other was the protection of doctrine. The other, the autonomy of the local church. The other, the freedom of speech, as long as it's not hate speech.
My advice to the Commission would be, we don't think this thing should be steamrolled. We understand that there's pressure of time, but the religious community is a very diverse community in South Africa. And therefore, we should be given enough time to discuss these matters.
The focus now shifts to Parliament to act on the recommendations. Mareketla Mhlave, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Let's go to Pretoria. Professor Maluleke, do you think that some of those recommendations made by the CRL commissions that the churches need to be registered and so forth are going to work?
Well, they could work, of course. It depends on whether they will be or can be enforced. I mean, it's one thing to have a recommendation which may become a law, But if you are unable to enforce it, then it is problematic. Let me just say that I think we must commend this commission for stepping into this space, which has been bubbling over for a long time, and no one has seemed able or willing to do something about it, including the police. And so I think the policy angle that the commission is taking is a very useful one. I heard you say that they want to treat churches like businesses.
Yeah.
I don't know that that is correct, Alicia, because you and I pay taxes. We are not businesses. You could argue that we are being treated like businesses by government. The paying of tax is a normal thing for all citizens, including corporate citizens. I don't think it is such an outrageous thing to ask for everyone who is making an income to pay tax and therefore contribute to the development of the country. I also don't think it is such an outrageous thing to require people who are acting and therefore collecting public money to be registered somewhere. I think it is unfair of South Africans to always go ballistic every time a pastor makes people eat snakes or uses doom, and then we go all hyper for a week or two, and then we are quiet until it happens again. The CRL is proposing something to be done. I think Parliament is wise enough to work out what is practical and what is not, but I really want to commend this commission for the work that they have started.
All right, and with that in mind, gentlemen, I mean, the issue though always goes back to that, the effectiveness of the CRL Commission, and of course their recommendations. I mean, how binding are they? We're still very at a grey area when it comes to the powers that the Commission actually has, Shani?
Yeah, indeed. For me, my main concern is that when it comes to things like state and religion, whatever intervention they have, we must not give the state too much power to interfere in people's lives. Because once they have that, they're not going to give it back easily. And on the other hand, yes, we understand that there are a lot of people who are being actually, people are using, taken advantage of because of their belief in a particular system of religion. And that is very unfortunate, quite honestly. But I would caution against going all out to try and regulate churches and monitor every single activity. But certainly, I think there's got to be some minimum level of monitoring and registration, either as a NPO or not-for-profit organization, or for the public benefit. Some type of registration, some type of monitoring has to happen. And more importantly, I think we need to educate the public about what their rights are. And maybe, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do, to actually go tell somebody that, you know what, actually there's no way in any scripture, be it the Mahabharata, the Bible or the Quran, that says you should eat snake and you'll be well, sort of thing. So I think it's also what sort of education do you give? But there's got to be some level of awareness where people do not just take the person standing in front of them, everything they say, excuse the pun, as gospel truth. But how do we get people to learn to interrogate the information that they receive from the various religious leaders so that they can actually make up their own minds? Don't outsource the business of thinking to somebody else just because they call themselves a religious leader.
Yeah, I think that regulation should basically be looking at the human rights aspects of things, don't you think, Mielani?
Yeah, it has to look at that. It's a good position that they have, and I believe probably there are some of the churches that have tried to work out processes that are better, and there are some of the churches that, even if they are called charismatic churches, you will understand why they are called charismatic churches, because a Christian church or a charismatic church has to be basically within certain doctrine, and the issue of grass, doom, they are not related with a charismatic church. Probably on the other side of like churches, it can go to that. But the crying need of organizations now is leadership. Leadership is a serious challenge in the 21st century globally. In South Africa, for these 10 years, it's very, very bad. And, we went to a situation of things, we don't know where to do team building, at what department, at which organization we can do team building. But it is a good issue. I think the churches can come together and discuss. I mean, the churches that are in order, they can come together and discuss this matter. And then as well, government has to follow its processes. It's not only the churches that has to feed on the government. I think the government is in a good position. They have to intervene in this issue and make sure that enforcement take place, because we can't see people taking doom, sprayed with doom, drinking petrol and all other things that we can't mention. So it's really, really bad. You won't separate whether it's a church or it's a traditional healer like now when you are at church, you understand. And people are even afraid to go to churches. So it is very sound for churches to take a stand as well, to organize itself and come up and comply with governance processes, comply as well with financial results, because part of that is they are receiving a lot of money, and when they are receiving a lot of money, accountability and responsibility has to take place. If the churches they feel they don't want to be accountable, other people who are not in good discipline, they will continue to come in the space and take advantage of the people like at large.
Now the Prof is disagreeing that those churches or charismatic churches are a business, and says well, if it's an individual taxpayer, then it sounds much better. But are those churches not necessarily a business? Okay, I'll bring it just now, Prof. Shani?
Well, actually, I think they are being run like a business.
Yeah.
When someone actually goes out there and takes
out their money to fund your
lifestyle,
and your lifestyle.
That's to me a business. And my advice to the public is that, just because somebody calls themselves a religious leader does not mean they have a direct Twitter line to God. Do your own thinking. And, half the time you'll be told rubbish, that it just sounds like rubbish. Do your own thinking, good people.
Pictures with the angels.
Absolutely. You too can also talk to God. That's why you pray. Otherwise, why pray on any other given day? Why not wait until Sunday and then give your prayer needs to, the church leader, and then they will obviously WhatsApp it up to God. It doesn't happen because you, as an individual, have a line to that God entity as well. So use it.
Let's get a brief one from you, Professor Maluleka, before we go, because we know that Pastor Mporo is actually intending to sue the Commission for defamation of character.
Well, I think what this commission has done, they have touched the churches where it matters, especially when they refer to the income. I wanted to say they have touched the churches on their studios, and I think that's why you're getting reaction. That's why you're getting a reaction like that. But what I understand the commission to be saying is not so much that government must control everything. When I read that brief report that they have written, what they are looking for is a mechanism where there can be peer review and peer control between and among the churches themselves. And I don't think that is a bad proposal at all. And after all, these are recommendations for further discussion. And what I like is that they are starting a discussion that is necessary in South Africa for South Africans, rather than us waiting for each crisis and then looking shocked and expressing our shock from left, right and center.
Thank you, Prof. They've touched them at their studios. Just a reminder that Rights and Recourse will be running with this story in depth later on today from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock right here on the SABC News channel. Let's take a quick ad break. After that, we discuss the string of burglaries at key justice as well as governmental institutions and ask, could all these crimes be an inside job? Find out after this.
The Law Society has slammed notices sent to 4 universities to jack up standards or risk losing their LLB courses. The Council on Higher Education issued a stern warning to the universities to conform within 6 months.
I think it will affect the university. I think outside the law faculty, there's a funding issue.
It's been 112 years since Enoch Sontonga died as a relatively unknown composer, choir master and teacher. But today his legacy lives on through his greatest composition, Nkosi Sikeleli Afrika.
For all your news updates, stay tuned to Your World from Monday to Sunday.
We live with this threat of violence. This is a strange and weird thing, if you come to think of it. So we don't live in a society, which is where the question is. We want to live in a society where we trust that we will not be violated.
A man abducted her from a taxi rank in Baragwanath.
He would have taken me and killed me. He would have shot me while I was running, you know. But none of those things happened. And, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, like, this is a real miracle.
How does the police unit of family violence follow new crime trends?
Station crime intelligence will from time to time present the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis. We respond to those.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. The National Prosecuting Authority office was broken into this past week, and 2 laptops and hard drives belonging to prosecutors were stolen on Monday. Now, this is the latest in a series of break-ins at high-level justice as well as governmental institutions. The burglary came a week after the Hawke Silverton offices were also broken into. And in March, intruders broke into the office of the Chief Justice Mogoeng in Midrand, stealing several computers containing personal information on the country's judges. Meanwhile, a special police unit has been deployed to tackle the crimes that have unfolded in and around the OR Tambo International Airport. The Minister of Police, Fikile Mbalula, is adamant that the criminal activity at the airport is collusion by airport officials who are greedy and corrupt. Let's find out more in this clip.
Individuals in these offices who want to kill their whereabouts and the clues that have been followed by the law against them. They ban offices and the material as a way of destroying evidence. So it has got nothing to do with politics whatsoever. It has got everything to do with greed and corruption. And we are following them wherever those have actually taken place. Even at the Hawks, the people didn't steal the files of, dockets and all of that. They stole stuff that belongs to HR and finance. So it's an inside job, no doubt about it. All leads have been followed. And very soon, like I said, arrests will be made based on the information that we've got. We're following all leads, and those who are responsible will be brought to book.
Prof. Maluleke, these are clearly organized crimes targeted to the justice system. What do you think is the actual motive behind the attacks? I mean, Police Minister Fikile Mbalula denies that the break-ins are politically motivated. Instead says the crimes are an inside job motivated by corruption.
Well, I mean, he contradicts himself somewhat, because he says they've got nothing to do with politics. They only have to do with corruption. And corruption is political. Corruption is economic. Now, you see, if we want to be severe and to be pessimistic about these break-ins, you could argue that they are part of a pattern that we have seen to intimidate and to weaken certain institutions in the country, institutions across the criminal justice system, institutions such as the judiciary. I mean, a break-in into the Chief Justice's office is a serious matter.
Yeah.
And that perhaps they are part and parcel of a larger effort to weaken state institutions, which links to corruption in the sense that your state-owned institutions are also being weakened. And so in the end, you will have a weak police system, you will have a weak judiciary, You will have a weak prosecutory investigative system. You will have, everything will be weak. And you ask yourself, why then do you want to get out of the ICC? Because you're not going to be able, as a country, to follow up when you have big issues that are challenging you. So it is worrying. It's really, really worrying.
Very worrying indeed. So, Mielan, is it political, criminal, or just tactical break-ins that we're seeing?
The deep part of it can be political because one, you will see that when these emails come, probably in 2 years, the ones that they are taking the laptops for and everything, it is mainly like political to contest positions, and when one has been appointed for a particular positions, so then you will get emails that come up and tarnish the the reputation of such a candidate as having done a particular thing like before. I think the issue is the state is in its deepest ICU like now, and really this country needs help. It can be all like leaders. We need to look at these things as a critical issue and a priority. The country has reached a point where you can't be struggling for kids, women and kids, or a child and women abuse. It's one that has been taking along and it's not solved. Now the whole state has collapsed. So you don't have reliance in anything. When you get out, you don't have protection. I think the government has to relook on almost everything. Or the leader that has to come, because almost the leaders that are there, almost everyone has lost hope on them. Even the tripartite alliance has lost hope to each other.
I mean, shouldn't these places or institutions be guarded like, the key sectors of our society that they are? I mean, extra security. Shani?
Well, you would think so. And the other thing, when we look at the items being stolen, these are not high-value jewelry. These are just computers, but with high-value information.
Yeah.
So clearly there is a motive there. It may not be political, but clearly it's very targeted, and there's an agenda being pursued, and we can't really, ignore that. But on the other hand, I think we should forgive our police minister. He has a tendency to say big bombastic words and get lots of headlines. I'm still to see evidence of action. Yes, he responds. Yes, he will say something, but where is the action? Because that's what the country is asking. You're saying that whether you say it's a political or not political, as a law enforcement agency, where's the action that's been taken? Where are the arrests? Where are the suspects? What is being done?
Investigations are being done, Shoni. After the break, the public protector backtracks on her decision to order Parliament to amend the Constitution to change the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank. It's coming up after the short break.
Rights and Recourse tackles constitutional issues.
When South Africa became a constitutional democracy, we had a fairly sound legal system in place requiring the Constitution to guide the direction in which it must go and the way in which it must be refashioned.
The Justice Ministry, the custodian of human rights.
We actually have a plan to come up with a comprehensive review of our human rights instruments.
Advocates dealing with evidence.
Sometimes you have to use a crook to catch a crook. So we expected that the credibility would really be taken to task. You try and consult your witnesses and prepare them as best as you can.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Matez on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Africa is constantly getting new technologies, and with that comes new terms.
Massive, open, online university. And primarily what they are doing is they're established in the community, so they're well established within the Soweto community.
Internet of Things also covers small sensors, so you can do like home security, motion detectors, IP cameras.
On Network, we simplify these terms for you. We also have new gadgets and social media.
When it falls on the ground and then the battery, everything falls off, people just put it all together and then your phone is back in shape.
The Vulega
app, we initially started off by doing this manually.
The internet is actually my favorite fashion invention of all time.
Let's network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
In our final segment, Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane is under immense pressure following a backlash from ABSA. This week, the banking giant filed papers to challenge her report, implicating it in a dodgy apartheid-era financial bailout. And ABSA wants the High Court to set aside Mkhwebane's remedial action that orders them to pay back 1.125 billion rand. The Public Protector's remedial action was harshly criticized across the board. Mkhwebane also released the CIEX report where she ruled that the Special Investigations Unit recover the 1.125 billion rand loan from ABSA. And early in the week, the Public Protector was forced to backtrack on her decision to order Parliament to amend the Constitution in order to change the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank. Let's take a look at this clip.
Mkhwebane has admitted that her recommendation on the mandate of the Reserve Bank was wrong. It was an honest mistake, she says, but those who recommended her appointment are spitting fire.
The Public Protector must come clean, tell us who advised her, and tell her why she chose to take such monumentally poor advice. It's very clear that she doesn't understand her mandate, and if she does, it's very clear that she has no intention of operating within her mandate. This is not a blunder. It can never be classified as a blunder. It cost the South African economy. She has ordered Parliament to amend the Constitution. The monumental arrogance of that is staggering.
Well, that office does not have any room for a mistake because her findings are binding. She should have known better. Actually, she has demonstrated her incapacity, incompetence, and failure to comprehend the rule of law. She just has to go.
They say her recommendation was reckless and ill-considered. Even legal experts are skeptical about her suitability to hold office.
It's quite clear that the Public Protector got the law wrong. It wasn't a mere technical error. She misunderstood her mandate, she misunderstood the extent of her powers, and it was a serious error that had a significant negative impact on the South African economy.
The Speaker of the National Assembly has, however, accepted the explanation. Manelisi Tubase, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, I guess this begs the question, what does this now mean for her future decisions that she's going to make? I mean, are people going to have to run to court every time to challenge the decision because they feel she might not have a clear understanding of what her duties are actually supposed to be, Sean?
Well, she's going to have to do a great deal to convince us that she deserves to be in that position. And perhaps she has already started doing so. For instance, if you look at the application by the president, which she obviously said the president has little chance of success. Perhaps that's one way of saying, you know what, perhaps I started on the wrong foot here. Give me a chance to mend my ways, so to speak. But that was a monumental error on her part. She has access to legal experts. She has access to, she has a budget to seek the opinions of experts in various fields in the economy and other various sectors. Why didn't she get those that advice? She's also an advocate, we're made to believe. You know, and I would expect her to know a little bit better. And so far, I'm not seeing evidence of that, and that's very disappointing for someone in that office.
Professor Maluleke?
Yeah, look, she hasn't covered herself in glory over this Reserve Bank remedial action that she proposed. And the flip-flopping has not helped because what it does, it makes people imagination run away. You know, what was she trying to do? Did she know what she was doing or didn't she? And was she perhaps serving an agenda that it has nothing to do with the law as such? You know, and if so, is that agenda away? Has it gone away just because she says now she's not going to oppose? And if you look at the comments that have been made by the Reserve Bank in response, they don't believe that this is the end of it, and they would like more from her than simply to say that I'm not going to oppose, that I've made an honest error, because they fear that this demand for the Reserve Bank to be nationalized, or Parliament to instruct Parliament to do something, may not necessarily be the end of this particular discussion. So I think she is in trouble. But South Africans, you know, have been very generous and patient with the Public Protector's Office. They have really showed a lot of goodwill towards her, and I think that goodwill is about to run out if she doesn't prove to every South African that she is indeed independent. And maybe the state capture report stance she has taken is a beginning of that mending of the trust that South Africans seem to be losing on the Public Protector's Office.
Thank you, Prof. Mielan, I just want you to make a quick comment on this one. I mean, ABSA's argument is that the Public Protector's Office does not have any powers whatsoever to investigate any matters that occurred pre the operations of the Public Protector's Office.
I think probably the ABSA might as well need to get legal guidance regarding which matters needs to be investigated. So it is clear the Public Protector and the Justice has to take justice in all that. But like what I wanted to indicate is lack of vision and charisma from the Public Protector. I think it's mainly the critical issue that she finds herself in that situation.
Okay, Mielani, thank you so much. With Mr. Shawnee as well as Professor Maluleke joining us from Pretoria. Thank you so much for watching Media Monitor. We hope that you join us again, same time and place next week. That is right on the SABC News channel. I'm back on top of the hour with AM News. Stay tuned for that. Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
So from Port Elizabeth, I eventually left there, joined the circus, as you know, and travelled. I was a singer, I was a race car driver, and I wanted to see what my chances were in America. So I started off with MTV, and I started producing music, because I was in the music business, you know. So I started producing musical acts with Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, Motorhead. I became Wine, Women and Song. That was my life in Hollywood.
A pioneer, a Crystal Award recipient, Basil Gold is a force to be reckoned with. For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.